This is my backup here. Okay, what's going on?
Okay, at this time I'd like to call to order the Advanced Disposal Emerald Park Landfill Standing Committee at 5 p.m. for March 6, 2017. Would the secretary please read the roll?
Okay. Chairman Mark Slocum.
Here.
Alderman Madden.
Here.
Don Matika.
Here.
Senior. Roland Kiefer.
Here.
Michael Colley.
Mike is absent and excused.
Pat Murray.
Here.
Greg Burmeister.
Here.
Harvey Schweitzer.
Here.
And Rebecca Matano.
Here.
Thank you.
In addition,
Joe Spears.
yep,
No S on the end, but.
Joe Spear. Yep.
And Spear. And I don't have those
Oh.
other names.
Mike,
Pardon me?
you're talking about Mike, is that?
Right.
Mike Hackney.
Mike Hackney
Mike Hackney
from the landfill.
from the landfill.
Yeah.
And?
Brett Coogan.
Brett Coogan from the landfill also, I take it.
Yes.
Okay.
Statement of public notice. That's you.
Yeah, it's just, Dennis, you just say the meeting was noticed according to the,
Open meetings law.
Meeting was
Noticed?
noticed according to open meeting laws.
That's correct.
Perfect.
Approval of the minutes of the, I think it's October, wasn't it? November 7th meeting.
So moved.
second,
Corrections, addition, discussion? Upon hearing none, all those in favor of the minutes as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are accepted unanimously. Open forum. I did get an email from a new resident, and I did not respond to him, unfortunately, but I thought they might have got information from the city because that's who they contacted at first, and I thought they might be here tonight, but I don't see anyone.
was it one of the complaints?
No, that wasn't a specific complaint right now. A lot of interest, that's at this minute. They've just moved in, so that's where they're coming from. Compliance officer report. Joe, you're on.
All right, we moved into 2017, continue with audits. We started the year with some changes to the audit form, working on a new map that Brett will be providing me in April. The landfill operation itself hasn't been an issue as far as the audits go. In November, after our last meeting, I started getting odor complaints from Harvey and from a lady in Champions Village, and the city clerk contacts me when complaints come in, so we had a total of 3 complainants. That counted to 11 complaints in 2016, and we've had 7 more in 2017. It's become a discussion that we've had at our audits with Brett and Mike. And at first they were taking up the access road, which means they'd excavate to the waste depth, and the next morning they'd fill, so there was potential for odor from landfill gas or from garbage. And then they had a contractor on site that was doing the trench work for the new gas collection. And one of those trenches was left open overnight, so we attributed the odor to that. Outside of that, we haven't had something we can put our fingers on for the odor.
Okay, when it comes to odor, I have put that under an item of new business because there is more information and and more complaints that haven't gotten to the city. I have received them from people I've never have received a complaint from before in the past,
Yeah, I've got them.
and documenting them, but I've also been on the phone pretty regular with Mike too. And we think we have a strategy to try to address it, at least nail down what the causes are, but we'll take a look at some of that under the next item.
Okay. And then the rest of my report is, it's that time of year I produce the year-end summary. All the audits are in here. A disc is also been given to Brett and to the city and to the chair. And this goes to the chair. Everybody has a summary in front of them. For the most part, the summary really goes over the whole year. It hits on the odors we talked about. For recording, it's got, in the fourth paragraph, it has the names of the two landfill managers and their titles if you need them. And the only thing really to point out is odors and street cleaning and surface water management. So the surface water management is not technically an issue. They keep the ditches clean, they've got a pond that's partially clean, but they still haven't completed the Chapter 35 ordinance application with the city of Muskego. It's really not anything to act on. It's really the city engineer's office job to make that happen. I just continue the record of the fact that it hasn't occurred. As far as the odors go, you said we're going to talk about those next?
Yeah. On that Chapter 35 issue, what is it? Is it something the city needs to follow up on? Is it something the landfill needs to follow up on?
The city can enforce the landfill to provide a maintenance schedule. The state changed the maintenance schedule, with the committee's approval, we reviewed it, to as needed. But that doesn't change the fact that they fall under the stormwater ordinance for the city of Muskego, which states that they're supposed to submit a maintenance plan to the city. And that's what hasn't happened. But as long as they continue to maintain it, the city hasn't followed to enforce the requirement of the plan.
So if the landfill submits a maintenance plan to the city, that meets the requirements that the landfill has to do.
Correct.
And basically that plan can be basically just worded to say, as needed, it will be done, because sometimes that could be once a month if we get deluged with
Right.
rains, or we've had times where you could go years without having to do anything.
And if you check the minutes, we had this conversation
Yes,
a year ago.
Isn't the bigger issue is that if there's a problem, there's nothing recordable with the city on this, so isn't that the bigger issue?
No, the stormwater design is recorded with the city
Okay.
and with the state. It really just comes down to this, it's a checklist. Yeah, it's a checklist. The checklist says that the maintenance plan has to be submitted. It hasn't happened.
Got it.
And then the street cleaning, the median and the turn lanes, always aware everything ends up, because the street sweeper across the street turns off when he turns around in the turn lanes, and I assume when you guys pay to have somebody do it in front of your place, they get to the turn lanes, they turn it off. But it's not an action item. We didn't have any action items in 2016.
okay, but you bring it up because of what?
Because it has the potential to become worse. I think it's something that should be addressed.
Used to be a time when we
Okay.
changed sides. I mean, one day, 1 week, side would do it, and the next week, the other side would do it. That was when they got along. Something changed.
Well, no, the history is when Mike was the manager across the street,
Okay,
he signed a contract with the committee stating that he would have it swept 3 times a week
right.
and hired a contractor. When that was brought over here, that was never carried forward. There's still the commitment to clean the street, it was just never signed to be 2 days a week. So there was a time where there was more aggressive cleaning by both sides.
Because there's no way they're cleaning 3 times a week over there at this point in time.
Well, in the wintertime, I can see being real difficult to do.
Not this winter.
Well, this spring,
Yeah.
What, has there been complaints?
There haven't been complaints yet, but the amount of debris that piles up in the left turn lane gets larger and larger. And for a while, it dropped off because there wasn't auto fluff. Without auto fluff and the dual tires, a lot of auto fluff was getting tracked out. Now the distance out to the street is longer. For all I know, it could be that it's just heavy because of residential drop off and nobody uses a tarp. But because of the path of traffic and the way the sweepers work, the material ends up in the left turn lanes and in the median. So if it doesn't, nobody passes a vehicle down there that cleans it, it stays there and it's there the next week and it gets a little bit more and a little bit more.
Well, they've got pickers out all the time.
But they don't have pickers dodging traffic.
Well, on the paved part of it.
Mhm.
You were saying mediums, I'm sure they clean the mediums.
I believe so. I mean, certainly anywhere there's depression, they pick the litter out.
Yeah.
There's a lot of gravelly type stuff in the left turn lane. If you look at it, especially coming from the north, coming south, you can see it lays there. It's just a matter of if somebody needs that, and if it's clay, it's gonna be slippery. Which is one of the reasons I assume you're wanting the street clean.
Well, if it's gravel, it's like ball bearings too.
But I'm not getting out to look at it either, but I just can see that it lays there.
And I should conclude with, it is addressed after I make the comment when I'm out for an audit. It's not like I come out and it's got debris in it 2 weeks in a row.
Okay.
So is that something that we need to decide that's gotta be done once a week for sure, or?
Well, we're not gonna decide that tonight, but I think we can, and right now, it's being opened up as part of the annual review. And what I would like is for Mike and company to come back with a proposal on how to address it.
At the next meeting,
Yeah, that'd be fine.
we do have a sweeper that we contract.
You know, what do you need to do? You look at the issue, look at the problem, see what you need to do to correct it, that's all. Then let us know. And if you decide to put something in place next week, you could send out an email so stating,
We can do that.
okay? Joe, further items?
That's all I have.
Questions, further discussion on 2016 audit?
Oh, I did have a quick question, Joe. Does
Go
your
ahead.
full document include, do they provide or disclose the inspections of the incoming waste? If they're required by the committee, do we see those random inspections?
No, but we have access to them if we want to.
Okay.
I have not actually looked at one in probably 5 years.
I'd just like to see what happens, what
What's-
you're noting, what you see.
Randoms?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
random.
random inspection
Yeah.
reports. I don't need all of them, I'm just curious
Well-
if it's something we would want to do.
I can start asking for copies when I want to do an audit.
And then just include them in that, I think that maybe.
Yeah, it's just ensuring that everything that's supposed to be done is being done. That's what the job is here. Any other comments, questions? Thank you, Joe. Status of projects, clay extraction,
Nothing going on there at all. Not until this spring anyway, spring, summer.
is that May, June type time period?
Yep.
Okay.
Off-site or on-site?
Most of it will be on site.
Back of future parkland again?
We're not quite sure. We might be able to stockpile some of it up on the top of this hill here,
Okay.
the extra.
Sure.
We gotta remove so much and we will be constructing a cell this summer too. So we'll be needing some of that just to flip flop.
Household hazardous waste?
Do you wanna just move that down to lump it all together, or?
Sure.
Any objection? No objection, we will do that. MMSD,
As far as this building here,
as far as this building and gas deliveries,
Yeah, I mean, we're under a new contract with MMSD. We're delivering everything they can take. From time to time, they don't take everything that we can deliver. So that's what we're doing right now. See the flare.
yeah, I've noticed that a couple of nights.
It's
that-
not as big, if you will. That's the only way I can explain it. You know, it's burning like 300 CFM, where if you're burning it all, it's 1,500 CFM. So, it's the only difference. But as for January and February, the plant's been running extremely well.
Okay. Now, whenever you go through a regen, that goes to the big flare?
To this one, only during a region.
During a regen, then all the gas goes to the big flare.
Right. If it has to.
Why would it not have to?
It depends on the moisture spec of the gas, if the regen. After the regen, if the gas comes out at a higher moisture content, it goes to the big flare until the moisture content gets below our deliverable limit. But with the additions we made out here, we got rid of that giant glycol unit, made some 2 chiller units in. With that addition, that's becoming less and less, so we don't flare during regens much anymore at all.
Okay. Electronic recycling?
It's going as well as expected.
Yeah, I mean, we
they're-
still
they're-
overflow it.
Yeah, but they're here every week.
Yes.
Every week?
Yeah. They're doing a pretty good job with it, actually.
Yeah, it's kind of-
Who do you contract with?
We don't, the
City
city
does,
does.
but
Yeah.
City contract with?
Legacy, is it?
yes, like, that's correct.
Are you handling that contract with the city now? Dan?
I'm paying them, yeah, so. Yeah.
But you're going to be handling it
Well.
on into the future?
They'll be handling it in finance, or probably, Mike probably will, but I'm making sure they get paid right now, so
Okay.
in the future.
But-
It'll probably be Mike as long as he's there until there's a new city engineer.
It's Mike.
He's,
Mike Paulus, the acting city engineer right now from Great.
That's what we're outsourcing.
Contract.
Engineering, yeah, it's our
Mhm.
contract.
Until you get a new public works director.
Sure.
So you guys are aware that we have a collection event in Muskego coming up in May with the.
It's out on the website. I put it out. Everything's out there, yes.
Making sure.
Yep, I'll handle all
I'll be in
that.
touch with you.
Yeah, I'll handle all that. I'm updating the website and taking care of all that.
Great.
Okay. Residential drop-off?
No issues.
She has a smile on her
Yeah,
face.
she's happy to be out there.
Right, and she's doing a good job.
Yes.
She communicates very well.
Her name is Grace.
Yes. I got here at 5 to 12 and she says, you know he's closed at noon, right? And I said, I do, I only have 2 bags.
Right.
But she was very pleasant.
Just say, can I leave these for Mike?
Yeah.
Okay, well testing, well water protection area. I think we've got,
Perfect.
Sorry I was late. All right, well tested.
introduce yourself,
My name
please.
is Frank Perugini. I'm with Environmental Sampling Corporation. We do the private well testing of 35 homes around the landfill. We coordinate with the site to send out the cards. This year, we sent out 102 cards. And of those responses, there's a postcard in there that they would send in to have their well tested or not. We only received 29. So we got on the phone and we sort of canvassed the ones that had in the past been on routine testing and things. We were able to get the 35, but it did take a little bit. So it got stretched out a little longer than what we like to do. We like to collect the samples as quickly within a 2 to 3 day period so that we send them into the lab and they go through the lab together versus one, twosies, threesies, things like that. So it's less chance of contamination, cross-contamination. So like I said, I think next year what we're gonna do is gonna take a look at that card or that letter that goes out with it and maybe just revamp it a little bit. Because I think what people are doing, I don't know, they're just being complacent or comfortable. There weren't any complaints, everybody was fine. But they get the letter and say, no, did it last year, don't need to do it this year, or whatever. And they're not doing it. It's a free program, they're not being charged. We don't report to the DNR if their well, is, as a bacteria issue, we recommend to them what to do. But we don't, sell services, if you will, after that. It is completely a free lunch.
So I don't think, if we got a card, I don't remember seeing it. And I don't know if it's mistaken with junk mail that hits the garbage can, is it just a,
Sure.
is that it, is
Do you
it
have a
just a
sample?
little card?
I don't have one with me, but I could, for the next meeting, I could bring what another sample looked like, and I'll show you the draft and things like that, yeah.
How many returns do you get?
Oh, this year?
No, things that don't get delivered?
Oh, that don't get delivered, there are a few, I'd say about less than a dozen or so that just some vacant homes and things like that, and addresses that no one lives there. But yeah, there's one of them, Julianne and I made an effort, I think a few years ago, to go around and make sure that we're not sending it to some of those properties that you guys already own or advanced owns and things like that. But like I said, we're able to, in a way, it was sort of good because we contacted the people last year, if you remember, there were 10 people last year that had VOCs in their well. And we recommended that they submit their card this year to get retested. Some of them forgot, so we were able to contact them and get them back in the program. Others, they just didn't want to be bothered. I don't know, it was Christmas. It was the first week in December. It wasn't at the Christmas holiday, but everybody's busy that month. But it's a good thing. I think everyone's pretty fine with it.
I think because I've heard from some people that think you're associated with the landfill, and they also have fear of the DNR coming in and looking at their well if something does go wrong. I think when your new letter, if you could kind of separate out.
All right, we could do that
You're independent.
better, clearer up front. But at the letter that when we do test and we send out a letter to them, we explain who we are and the landfill is a landfill and we're environmental sampling and we collected this and we give them results. And nobody, to my knowledge, anybody's ever followed up, or DNR's ever followed up with them or anything like that. Because if you look at the chain of custody, when we do the bacteria, there's a portion on that chain of custody that the laboratory would notify DNR if you wanted them to. And we check no. So it all comes back to us and then we pass that information on.
Why would people be afraid to have their well tested in case it's bad? What is wrong with that?
It may
Oh, my well might be bad, so I better not have it tested.
I think it's human nature that people aren't looking for bad news.
No, but I'd rather feed bad water to my kids or my animals.
Some people are also worried their well's so good that the state's gonna come in and take it from them. That they'll suddenly become the municipal supply.
Personal experience, and I'm not bringing up, there's another landfill in Muskego. When I was working at Waste Management, we did a well testing program there with the DNR. They came down, they took samples, we split with them. When we were leaving, we said goodbye. The DNR handed them a laundry list of things that were out of compliance, where the faucet is, and you need a sample faucet, things like that. This is before the internet, before we got to the next home. The woman, I swear to God, the woman said, "Who's with DNR? Who's with Waste Management?" I raised my hand, I'm Waste. Everyone else is DNR. You could come in, DNR stays out. I swear to God, just a driveway down before the internet. They were already communicating, don't let DNR into your house. I swear to God. So I ended up filling both sets of bottles and doing the split that way. It was hilarious.
I know a lot of people that don't care.
They just don't,
For a multitude of reasons.
Well, there's very few of us that love the DNR, but I'm talking about my well,
I
my
don't,
personal health.
I get it, Roly.
We've been doing this program since what, 95, 96? 96. So I mean, it's been a long time and, Well, to dive into the data a little bit, iron again is pretty prevalent. It ranges anywhere from just above the detection limit or 0.3 up to about 2.5. There were 10 wells that had VOCs detected.
Okay, I got a question. On the iron, Are you talking both mineral and bacterial, or just mineral? Or
I think
what?
it's a mineral. It's a
Mineral?
line, right. And this would have been collected at the downstairs tap, right at their the
Closest
pressure tank.
to the well you can get,
Correct. If you recall, we take a lead sample at the kitchen tap now.
point of use.
All right, point of use, because that faucet or sample point down there was giving us had some lead that was leaching out from that faucet. So we go to a point of use sample. So we take a lead upstairs and the rest of the samples right at the pressure tank, or right next to the pressure tank, as close as we can without plumbing effects.
I got one more question. Are you taking any samples after water softening or water treatment equipment?
The only sample that might have a water softening, but we haven't put it in bypass, would be the point of use sample. We let that purge for 10 to 15 minutes, but there might be some residue salts, or that would be the only one. Other than that, it comes in right before the pressure tank. So it'd be right before the water softener. But the point of use sample might have some, but that's lead. And it has not affected, the salts have not affected that at all, or bias.
Right.
Like I said, there were 10 people that did have VOCs detected in their well. Of the 10, 9 were all at the J level, which was an estimated value below the limit of detection and between the limit of detection and quantification. Only one person had a result above a hit of 0.7 parts per million, I believe it was toluene. We, of course, on those 10, recommended that next year they add their name to the well, or less to be tested again, and see if we can get some corresponding data. We looked at the wells and location to the landfill and so forth, and they're up gradient, side gradient.
Are they the same as last year?
It's very close. There's 23 wells out of 35 that were similar than last year, the same. Because there seems like there's a pool of people that have their well tested that so not that there weren't, 8 new. There were just 23 of,
The question, I think, was on the VOCs. You've got 10
Oh, on
this
the
year,
VOCs?
10 last year. Is this a repeat of the same homes, or is it some additional homes?
There were 3 of them. 3 of them are repeat.
Okay.
Low level.
3 repeat, low level, 7 new,
7 new.
and
From previous years. I didn't go back any further
No,
than
that's-
last year.
that's fine. Are they in the same proximity? Anything that relates to them at all?
Not that I could see.
Where's the toluene hit?
Toluene hit is on 124th Street.
When this information is provided to the
And on
committee
Loomis Road, there's 2, I'm sorry.
of the toluene,
And 8 Mile Road.
Yeah, but then the other one's a J flag.
Yes, all of them are J flag. The only one that wasn't a J flag was, okay, what else?
That's when it's detectable, but you can't define it.
Start over
It's an
again.
estimate.
Sorry.
Now explain what a J flag is, please.
Okay, so you've got the limited detection, where you know it's there, but you can't quantify how much.
Can't measure it.
Right. And then the limit of quantification, where right at that point, that's how you know exactly how much is there. So when we do the detection, we call it J flag, we estimate what's there. When I say we, the chemist does the estimation. So even when you get the estimate, that value is based on that sample. So you can't compare one J flag response to another J flag response. It just means that it's there.
So if it was on 124th and it was on Loomis and it was on 8 Mile, it pretty much is all around landfill.
No.
Not around, but it.
Because there's other wells. Now, the Loomis and 8 Mile, though, corresponds with, I've got a site that I know the guy does his own body work. And once every 3 years, he does something where he contaminates his well, and we have to do toluene hit, but it doesn't travel. And it either means the wells are of different depths, or it really doesn't travel. But it's in that proximity, so you would use that in comparison. That's why I was curious where the timing is like.
You will get gasoline, you pour gasoline on the ground, you're gonna get a toluene hit,
Gotcha.
okay? And you're gonna get some of these others, because gasoline is a very complex hydrocarbon. It's made up of a whole lot
Somebody
of things.
sealed their basement the week before they did it. So Marvin, across the street, Marvin painted his basement literally 2 days before the sampling, that he knew was coming. And we had toluene, a whole bunch of different methyl chloride hits. It was terrible. But a month later, it had all, quieted down as the product cured. What were the other constituents?
The toluene, let me just finish up with the toluene. There were 5 hits of toluene. 4 of them were a J-flag, and 1 was at 0.771.
And where was that at?
The homeowner,
Just the location.
The
okay.
location.
You need to be approximate so that,
it's a car shop.
oh, God.
Okay. Thank you.
It has automotive repairs down the road there.
Okay.
Okay, and that's a repeat hit also?
That, we've had that in the past year, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's been a car shop or some kind of a vehicle
Automotive
service
repair.
area going back to the beginning of the Muskego, I think.
Or Durham, something.
Yeah.
When they have that, or like this guy on 7 Mile Road, how does he get informed that he's contaminating the water?
Well, it's not necessarily that he's contaminated the water. So when you take where do they sample the shop?
There's a pressure tank right in the back by the oil burner.
Right. So it's really hard, especially in a commercial setting, to take a water sample safely and so on. So that low-level toluene hit easily could be what is in the air when they sampled. And that's still way below any kind of health issue for airborne toluene. When it's the guy with his private well, he gets a letter saying that there's toluene in his well, but he's not defined as the pollutant. And if it was high enough to be a threat to the public health, well, he'd be notified. But neither site has had any, public health threat constituent detections.
But they do get a letter saying.
Yep.
And basically, we assure them, and we explain where the toluene comes from. We let them know that it's, in most cases, the laboratory error, things like that. And we assure them that it's not a landfill contamination, that it's not something that we see a fingerprint of a whole host of VOCs migrating, contaminating the water. The other constituent is carbon disulfide, but that primarily is a J and a B, which was a B means it was detected in the method blank at the laboratory. So there was some carryover, or there was some cross-contamination at the laboratory. Between the samples, there's a method blank in that carousel, and that the plunger that extracts or takes the sample out had something. And again, they're very low level. They're 0.06 is the lowest to 0.12.
When you're working down at that level, many times your hits are just pointing out the capabilities of the laboratory and the method that's being used to do this processing. Because it's not done in a class 100 clean room environment, totally separated out.
It should be a pressurized room.
Yes.
Meaning so that there is any contamination should be exiting through hoods or doors or whatever. Because there's other areas in the laboratory that use contaminant or use methylene chloride, acetone to clean and to do other things for extract in their samples. And then they're under a vacuum scenario. So the laboratory should, be both a positive and a negative room type of thing, and then they should be separated and so forth. Going back to the result, the actual analysis, these are the 524s, which is the private water drinking water standard, which, like you were saying earlier, has the lower detection limit. What we test for in the landfill is an 8260 VOC, which has a little bit of a higher detection, similar parameters. They don't line up perfectly, but there's enough in that group that do correspond with each other. Then the last but not least, our favorite, dichloromethane. That's at 0.61. That's also a J flag.
Just one?
Just one.
Same place, no?
Before I go to that one, I know that showed up in the past. I don't want to say that off the top of my head. I don't know for sure.
Okay,
There were 4 people that had bacteria that we retested. Okay, and they all proved positive again, so they had 2 results of positives. So we left them with the DNR pamphlet, asked them to either contact a well driller to have their well chlorinated, or they can chlorinate their well. I have not followed up with them, to see if they've done anything. We left it up to the homeowner. And that is about it.
What about sulfate?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sulfate, there were 7 people that had above 250.
Anything extreme?
The highest is 428. And I believe that's also, we've always had it in the 400s there.
okay. Tell us about
The
sulfate.
Sulfate has a secondary primary limit of 250. It's more of a
250 what? Gallons?
Milligrams per liter. It's more of an aesthetic limit.
Taste.
Taste. It's
Your body regulates sulfate as a health issue. So if you change 50 parts per million, your body will go through a purge. So somebody who lives at 400 drinks water at 250, they'll have some gastrointestinal problems, but then they'll be fine. Over 500, we identified as unsafe for infants because it could cause dehydration. But along with the taste, it is something that our bodies acclimate to.
chloride, there is no one over the 250 threshold. And manganese, there is one resident that was just slightly over the manganese limit. Other than that, everything was fine. TSS, pH conductivity, all parameters were good.
Okay. Manganese is considered a natural contaminant constituent of the
Occurring,
soils
right.
out here.
Yep, the
Yeah.
clay.
Do you know the depth of all the wells?
We don't have a very good, some of the homes that have a sticker near the pressure tank, the newer ones will have a well ID code and they'll have a well depth on there. We have that recorded. Others, they basically tell us, go down there it is, and we go. We try not, we ask them questions if they've done anything, not so much paint the basement thing, we don't get into that, but if they've done anything to the well, chlorinated, things like that. We've had instances where a well was pulled a week or month ago and had chlorine or, elevated volatiles and things, so. We ask some very, very basic questions, not.
I don't think there's a superficial aquifer any shallower than 168. I think all the research we've done, because of all the clay.
Say again now?
I don't think there's a superficial aquifer shallower than 168 feet.
No, there's perched water tables all over
Right,
the place.
right.
And if you've just got one home and a perched water table, it can be there forever.
But the landfill's never gonna impact that.
No. But I can understand that people on the other end aren't gonna know that. And so they get the impression that any reading of anything has the potential to have the landfill be a cause, even if the material is, totally benign.
Which is fine.
Yeah,
I mean, that's fine that people are worried.
I don't have a problem with that.
And as long as we can test it and say, no, it's not the landfill, that's our job.
No, it's not the landfill, and everything that we have to work from right now says it's safe.
So I have a question. Are we compiling this year over year? Do you have a running tally of all the tests you've been doing that is a searchable, filterable base that you guys are tracking hits and what it means and where they are?
Not from year after year, from
So-
previous year, things like that.
So maybe we're not doing as good of a job as we could be to be tracking these and looking at the hits and looking at history and making sure that there aren't impacts.
But many of these hits are below or they're in the J flag. I meant
They're not reliable. You can't
it's.
use them for any kind of a data analysis because
I'm not-
half of them or more could be lab contaminants.
So that's an education aspect of it then. So, I mean, you still should be tracking these and accumulating the data, correct? Otherwise, what's the point of the data?
Well, the DNR has established limits for all the VOCs.
And I understand
And
that.
we have not exceeded any of those
And
limits
I
or even
understand
came close to a PAL, which is 10 times prior to the limit.
And I understand that.
So I
But
mean,
we're still
I
collecting
think,
data and compiling it and have the information that we should then be continuing to review every year, right?
but I think we'd get closer to somebody, these people, I mean, we collect their data, we give them the results, we tell them what it is, and if there's any kind of dialogue, we entertain them, and we brought other people in on conversations, things like that. I would think once you have this database, and it looks like Big Brother might be watching now, you're gonna have this attitude out there that we know what your well looks like, or,
But I don't
Well-
know, we're sharing that with everyone. I think she's looking for the committee should
Actually,
have
that's,
some sort of
that's,
tracking.
It would
they,
be
they
public
can't
information.
share it with the committee
We're not
without
sharing
public
it.
information.
It's public, yeah, because we're all, but, I mean, the reality is, and that's an education component on our part. That shouldn't be a rationale for not doing it, for fear of public seeing it
but we
and
use
being
limits,
concerned.
we use the limits. I mean, obviously, if we had limits that were exceeded here, then I think your point would be, well, you know, we would take the next
So
steps.
we haven't had any limits that were ever exceeded in the history of well testing in the program?
We had some leads that were exceeded, and we changed the location, and that has corrected that. We've had maybe one or two, I'm just thinking off the top of my head of some VOCs of one or two analytes that may have been a hit of, you know, like 1 or 2 parts per million, or I'm sorry, 1 or 2 parts per billion.
I don't know, I just feel like looking at all the information and trending is very
Since I'm
important.
not defending my own work, this is easier.
You can't use this for trending.
There isn't, we haven't recorded enough information. And let me rephrase that. The information doesn't exist for us to generate trending. We've recorded the hits, and Frank can pull them back for us, and the write-up in the host agreement is different over here than it is across the street.
Mhm.
So the database I have is based on that host agreement.
Mhm.
But its manipulation is not defined. So I produce what the committee asked for.
Right.
But without actual data, it's like talking about recording snowfall in Hawaii and generating a trend. There hasn't been enough occurrences of snowfall for a trend to be developed. We haven't had any hits that are, it doesn't even matter that they're not attributable to the landfill. They just haven't existed to the point that we can use them as an analysis.
Well, it sounds like there have been some, just not a lot.
Well,
So I'm not- I
okay,
mean,
so
I'm
like the Tallywing hit that I know recurs because the guy does his own body work. That we've recorded as a trend in our database, but it doesn't pertain to the landfill.
So it's the old story, there's not a problem, don't create one.
When Briggs had their site.
Yep.
We used to record, and there was a database that you could track well to well, year to year. For many years.
On the site, yes.
Correct.
Right.
So I wouldn't think it'd be impossible to do that.
Yeah, but that,
Well, I mean, you have all the
but understand, that's
information, it's not being
different.
compiled and put out into the
The
public.
data
Because
you're
there hasn't been
collecting
a
off of
Public health
Briggs
issue.
landfill
Right, that's why.
is
We have some body shops and some
measurable,
dealers that test their
repeatable
water.
numbers.
I'll tell you,
Satisfy
if
the
they know you're
scientific
tracking,
method.
I don't think they're gonna.
J flags do not. So if you
Go back to, like, the
even
original
think about
10.
taking actions of any kind off a J flag,
Well, I wouldn't
you're
say
spinning
that.
your wheels.
Well, you got your test wells on the landfill anyway,
Correct,
Which is another topic.
which is all recorded.
correct. And that is a better program because those are at known depths,
Yes.
at actual locations, within 100 feet of the waste.
Yeah.
And if it's not showing up there, a half a mile, quarter mile, pick a distance.
What's the zone of impact of one of those wells? 2 feet, 3 feet? Come on, they're just a point. And there could be anything occurring in between, so I just don't want to get
No.
thinking that that's a big safety factor. It's important because it meets regulatory concerns.
Yeah, I would say it's important.
It is, because I also know that on the Briggs site, they found, because of their quarterly testing, a well that had failed. And, so yeah, I guess it was gonna be a topic, but if we're looking at the water and we're testing it, I think we should see the reports that come off the landfill. I've yet to see any information what these wells on the landfill are showing up with. You know, we do the residents, but what's here on the site? When do we see any of those reports? Does the city get them?
Well, that's not true. City gets,
No one at the city looks at it, so that's equivalent to the city not getting them.
Yeah.
I apologize. The city has acquired services that has them checked.
Is that your
And-
services?
Yeah, and to date, they haven't had an issue with their wells. If they had, it would have been brought up at a meeting, it would have been an email to you.
I
So
wonder if it's something that we could visit on our agenda items to,
And the
if he's
committee
already
can ask
doing
for,
it.
the committee can ask for materials from
Yeah,
landfill at any time, it's all public record.
Or
But-
website.
It's all DNR.
It's not gonna be of tremendous value to ask for it from the landfill unless this additional work is put into it
Right.
to create a database that can show trends.
DNR records all that stuff.
It's on the
We submitted,
DNR
all these reports submitted to DNR,
So we
DNR.
can
The
find
DNR
out
doesn't
the
get the
DNR
35 private wells.
No, they
No,
get
that-
our.
So again, that
They get our
is this
site
committee,
Right.
and see, there's a trust between the homeowners and us. I mean, it's like, property values, I don't wanna, you know, I mean, I could,
I understand that
why
you're
does he
the
impart, I don't
concern.
know.
Right, no, I
why
understand the
does he?
concern, and I don't wanna create a problem, but I also don't want to miss a potential issue, and so there are things that you put in place so that you don't miss it. And we're putting a lot of trust into you to tell us if there's something that we should or should not be.
Well, we provide,
Right.
we provide you electronic, we give Joe electronic and the lab reports, and again, and the DNR has established guidelines, and we haven't crossed any of
Sure.
those lines. And nor have we gotten any, nowhere near, have we gotten near those lines.
So, I mean, as long as we have
I
the
think to
backup
your
that's.
point though, we should see what the landfill's doing, what the landfill wells look like.
And if we can pull that, if Joe can report that to us.
Well, you can, like, I forgot, you can go to the website too, see the landfill.
Right, just, but if
The
you're
landfill's
doing
probably
it,
gonna be-
reviewing it for the city and providing them information or commentary on it, it would
Sure.
just carry that over to the meeting, would that be acceptable?
Sure. That's what this committee exists for, is to monitor.
Because if I remember the Briggs one right, you could track it from Highway 45 all the way to the back of their site. And when things started to move, it was pretty obvious there was an issue.
And Joe, I assume if you see something going on at the landfill, you're gonna say, oh, let's look at what was happening with these private wells, do I see anything happening here? Make the connections on behalf of the committee being the experts, right?
Actually, I would say, go back and have Frank do it. Well,
Right.
because he's been crunching the numbers for an extended period of time.
Right, I'm just saying,
But,
You
yeah, I
help.
mean, but we've,
raise that.
it gets reviewed and there hasn't been anything. And I guess I want to defend the industry a little bit. So these landfills are placed in 250 to 300 feet plugs of clay, and we're the sink. All the water flows here. So it's not that I think it's perfect, that it could never have a problem, but it doesn't compare to other sites throughout the state where you're in karst topography, or the other side of Muskego where it's a quarry. I firmly believe there's enough review with the way this site operates and the well sampling that it'll carry forward just fine.
I'm not doubting that.
No, I'm just saying.
You're
I mean,
saying
if-
things
if-
get
if-
missed
if it-
if
if
we're
it-
not
If hits start to appear, the trends will be developed.
And it's not that there's no water ever leaving the site. I
That's true.
understand the groundwater and the hydrology of the system, but water still leaves the site. So, alright, we can move on, sorry. That's
far
to
do
be
you-
a quick.
How far do you want me to go back to the next meeting?
Are you
What I would like is, for the next meeting,
This is not our job. I'm just making you look good.
you said that the landfill, the data for the landfill is available online. show us, explain it to us, how do we get at it? And is it meaningful? Is it just raw data?
Is it user friendly? Yeah, that's a good question.
Is it just raw numbers, or is it something that's, minimally graphed out? Is there any statistics run on it to look for trend analysis?
No. No, but but you can see trend analysis from previous years. The trend analysis is gonna be 1 to 3 years old.
Okay.
Just simply for data purposes.
For the next meeting,
Okay,
and put that on the next agenda?
Joe's gonna teach us how to.
And we'll just call it right now,
Do I have
landfill well water, test wells, I don't know. Landfill
Monitoring
test
wells.
wells, landfill monitoring wells, that's big.
What you cost coming here.
We still have the report from Grace.
oh, I'm worried about
Why
those.
do you
I'm
have
worried about
those
those.
bills? You want to
Right.
find
They,
raw
at the
water.
end, they actually had graphs.
Monitoring.
Yes,
We
we
have
did.
gas, we
Yeah.
have everything.
Yeah.
I think mine went wrong.
Yeah, but why
It's
should
probably
we-
all.
Go right ahead.
Anyone supplying
Why do you
data,
restrict my stuff?
leave this man out.
Tendency to throw it away.
Isn't he the one who asked for it?
Yeah, but 3 years is 3 years. After that, you don't need it anymore.
Except for data.
Still. Okay. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you. No, actually,
Did you have some material to be handed out, or? Please.
I have one last question for Frank, is that okay?
Yes.
So, how close was the dichloromethane? What was their estimate? Do you have it?
0.61 J flake.
So even their estimate isn't that high up.
Okay. Just explain fluorodichloro, please. Dichloro-difluoromethane. Yes,
Is Freon 12.
yes.
They're
Oh,
all.
are they?
And it's found throughout the atmosphere, but it shouldn't be in groundwater here. And there aren't any cars buried in the landfill,
No refrigerator?
and no refrigerators. And there shouldn't be any of this in the refrigerators in the lab. In fact, that's a big no-no. That was the excuse for what, a decade ago, that was the excuse, was that they had it in the lab. And it shouldn't be anybody's home. So, and we never get a real hit. But, we've had 14 J flags across the street. It's just one of these things that has there's no sound reason for it. And, a year will go by where there's none, and then it'll reappear.
Now, to say that there's no refrigerators buried in that landfill across the street is probably not a fair statement.
There's no cars. That's why I said there were no cars buried across the street.
No, but,
That we know of.
that we know of. But look up and down 45 if you want to look for vehicles. Especially old ones, deteriorated.
But it's not, the chemical's not water soluble.
No, I understand that.
It shouldn't trickle through the soil down into the groundwater. They found it in the polar ice caps. I mean, it's quite possible that, the individual, like we did find, one house we did the review on, it turns out he had this chiller so that the water came into his house at a certain temperature, which the guy who sold him the iron curtain had convinced him it had to be done, and that was a Freon 12 device, and that was probably where we got the odd hits from. But I was curious, because Frank has had it appear and reappear.
Yes, I know.
Last time it appeared was 2011,
Yeah.
approximately.
Good, I love the historical data. Nice work.
You're welcome.
And it was at a different location.
Why did you bring that up earlier?
Well, I know, just approximately.
Well, here, this will give you a headache, look at that going.
I actually historically have taken this to give to our environmental health lab to review. Do you want me to continue doing that?
What,
Just
what
like it's time.
kind of analysis are you, what kind of a response are you looking for the environmental
This
health?
wasn't something that I ever initiated, this was something that was initiated long before I came here, that these samples were taken to the environmental health person, and I have not done it because the committee didn't ask once I got here, and one year
Right.
she asked me about it, and I said,
So Karen used to do
not
that?
on a protocol, yeah.
Because she never informed the committee she
No,
was
she
doing it.
didn't. We
And never
got a
provided any
response back.
feedback, you know,
Must have not been anything wrong with it.
well, that, she never reported that either.
Yeah.
Never reported
I
anything.
don't know, I don't know how often, I don't know who all did it,
Are you spending the taxpayers' money again?
no. I'm the most responsible public servant you'll ever meet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You mentioned that was a guy. This was John. He was before Karen.
He's young. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any like
Oh, I like this.
specific details, I believe that this has been reviewed by the county in the past.
That may have started before Karen.
It may have, and I don't know how long it carried over, but I haven't been doing it.
Right now, we don't have a program to do anything, to get anything of value out of it, so I would say, don't
That's what
do
their
that.
job
We'll
is.
keep it on committee.
Yes, and by your questions, we're going to grab hold of that more as a committee.
Joe,
I'm
you make
in.
glasses.
No, I'm good, thank you.
That works for me, that's fine.
Any further questions on well water protection area, well water testing? Plan modification issues.
We handed out the communications between this site and DNR. Starting back from the last meeting we had, final cover energy dissipator fuel modification we had. All that is when we build the berms, take it to a low end of the berm, and we bury, or we set on top of the final cover a pipe, HDPE pipe. That pipe goes to a dissipator. That dissipator dissipates the water. Instead of washing it out, it just trickles or waterfalls instead, if you will, mixes it before, so you don't get any washouts below it. It was, we had that fuel modification based on, they had it set in the basin. Brett and I said, we don't want it in the basin. We want it back on the slope, at the toe of the slope. That's what that was all about. And it was approved by him. Final cover construction inspection.
Okay, did you see this, Joe, when this happened?
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, they asked me if I thought it was better in the basin, and I agreed with them right away.
Okay.
It should be up on the slope.
Okay.
And, there's a picture somewhere of it. It's the big concrete box. They haven't connected the pipe to it yet, but we've had erosion for what, 3 years? Why that?
Yeah, that slope.
Where the two phases meet, and that's where this connects in.
Okay,
Okay. Final cover construction inspection, that's just Ann coming out here doing her job during the final cover.
Yep.
DOT's sea soil, AEC approval, there was some soils that came in that were borderline between either we're gonna dispose of them or we can use them as ADC based on the analysis. Ann said ADC will work just fine, alternate daily cover. And then the annual compliance certification, thank you. Which is just me letting Ann know a little letter that says I reviewed all the plans and permits for the site and understand. I sign it, send it to Ann. It's an annual thing.
that's the thing they use, that's the gotcha,
Right, well, you're supposed to know this, Mike.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
okay, just wanted to know. Questions, comments, discussion? Property protection, sociological, you got more homes coming in, yes, no?
Haven't recently, no. I believe everybody got their payments for social hospital, should have got that first week of January.
Sociological first week of January?
That's when the checks went out, yes. Or they should have received them first week.
They come in by the 15th. I think they actually wind up delivered on the 15th.
They're slow at court.
Notice
So I
that.
shall ship them out again.
Yeah, but they were on time.
That's per the host.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, new business. Item number 1. Review 2000 and I assume that's 16 final data. Household hazardous waste.
So I sent all the data to the city and they kindly printed it all out and sent it to you guys. I also had emailed and then just made a few minor updates on it. So I'm gonna go over the real basics of this. You've got all the details, you can drill in all you want. And the basics is, we went way over budget, almost $18,000 over the actual budget, and that is still $27,000 over last year's budget. We had historical high pounds, 11%. 6 out of the 12 months were at the highest total ever, and I say 5 years, but it actually ended up being 6. We're at the highest ever recorded in the program history, so it's an interesting thing that there is clearly no explanation that was able to be provided by Veolia, as they basically said, this is a fickle beast and we can't control what people bring in. I would have been more able to realize that historical high tonnage had the participants gone up, but the participants stayed relatively steady over the term. So it's, 20,542 more pounds is quite a bit of extra pounds in 1 year. So
Would that come out to percentage-wise?
it was almost 11% more than the previous year.
Right, that's what I'm asking.
So, here we are faced again with, we did a lot of work together and a lot of great work together to come up with some plans and put them in place to control the costs since we were facing these continued budget problems. And it worked for a year, and now we're kind of back to square one with this pounds that came in, unfortunately. So I will keep watching it. I do not have any February totals from the vendors yet, which I don't typically get until the second or third week of the month after anyways. What I did want to bring up is that I had presented to you for reading the closure protocol for 2017. And so I'm not sure if there were questions on that. I also think we need to just, basically what I need to do is come up with some strategies and some plans for consideration as we continue to move forward. I have a true budget of $325,000 and we have to meet that budget.
Isn't that a son of a gun?
It is a ton of.
And they even measure you on that.
Do you know what the materials are that are coming in that might be coming in larger? Do you even get?
I don't.
You haven't run a
unfortunately.
student's t-test analysis on that?
We could. Can we get a double-tailed t-test?
Yeah.
What I really was more concerned about trying to figure out, and I think this is a concern that the committees had and that the vendors had all along, is that the people who are coming in are also small business owners or maybe small to medium business owners and maybe perhaps taking advantage of the free disposal system. The contractor has been very good at red flagging things to me, but quite frankly, when they're at that moment and they have 10 cars in line and a car comes in with things that they red flag, should we reject it or should they take it to make sure it doesn't get dumped on the side of the road? And my answer is always gonna be, take it and properly dispose of it, because otherwise we're gonna deal with it another possibly more expensive way.
Yeah.
But it's hard for them to, they're in a hurry, so they don't set it aside and wait to do it, they just continue moving about their process. So what I'd really like to do and what we're trying to do is purchase some scanners. They're actually Barcode licensed scanners, they're handheld little guns, they would each get a computer, and we do really timely compilation of this data. We do it all by hand. So they write all the tickets and and then we actually compile all of them, so my administrative assistant has piles of things every month when that comes in, and it's fairly cumbersome, but we actually went back and did a few months, and we found that one person used sites 5 times in 1 month. So those are red flags that we can be sending letters and notices out to residents to say, hey, we're paying attention, and, you know, and this person happened to be a small business owner, and so what was his business? I don't know, it was a holding company. So there, you know, these are things that we can start looking at. I don't think it's gonna solve our problems, but I do think it can become, increase efficiencies and allow us, if they did have somebody drop something off, it would be easier for them to red flag it through this program. So we're looking at it, I'll keep you posted, it won't impact the committee or anybody else, that would be something that the county would likely just take on to try to increase the efficiencies for our own staff.
So I have a question. I'm looking at this list of all the participants. And I'm looking at this list of where the money's coming from. There's more than one landfill that is in this area. Why don't everybody else is throwing?
It wasn't negotiated with you. The Orchard Ridge would be the only other one that would have provided money within one.
Well, that would have been good.
It was, I mean, that negotiation happened long before I came here. I will tell you that I do believe that there is some negotiation happening right now with that, and I know that my boss is on that committee. I'm not privy to any information that I can't share with that right now. But if there's money to be had, I'm sure that we will be working on that.
Awesome.
But for right now, we're still facing the issue that we continue to face.
I guess my point of wanting to know what the excesses are. If it's excess, like in November, people are trying to dump all their fertilizer and yard goods, or is it just a real broad spectrum of stuff?
I mean, you know, Joe, when you did the audit, it really was a broad spectrum of stuff. It wasn't consistent. There wasn't anything like, oh, everybody's bringing in this amount of materials during these times.
The only real obvious red flags was disposal cost. Not the disposal of the HHW, but the regular quote-unquote waste that they got. The different sites charge different amounts for their dumpsters. Other than that, nothing else was directly inconsistent.
Which we really get under wraps because we require them to provide us a report for that.
Yeah.
So we cut those costs way down in 16.
But there are, when we looked at it, the only thing I can see that could be taken out of the stream that would save money is the reuse fuels, oil burning and so on, because
Fuel
we're paying for it. I'm sorry, the county's paying for it, but Veolia is using it for their heat. So.
Yeah, we actually don't accept the oil.
I thought we took
freeze
oil
anymore.
out.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So we
So,
did,
yeah,
we did go on the
that's-
recommendation that there's free disposal programs that are available to
Right.
residents and they should use them.
Oil,
I
latex
would like
paints.
to do the same with bulbs and ballasts, to be honest with you, but that's a whole nother conversation, not for today, and it may only save us a few $1,000s, so.
Well, a few thousand here, a few thousand there. I heard someplace that's real money after a while.
It adds up, right? That's what we did to get down the first time. So I just, I broke down, provided as much data as I could. I put in under the site-specific summary, I just wanted to, just general things, we'd like to do the scanners, the Muskego site, so the site safety concerns that Veolia had sent, they had sent one about the traffic and the site safety concerns late last year. They also sent one about the storage on the site concerns. I've also had a few phone calls with Dave Jensen, who I'm not sure, I don't know if he's concerned about the program, if he likes I'm not real sure how he feels about the program, so I'll continue conversations with Dave Jensen.
Ask him point blank.
And basically, well, he got pretty upset because I believe when we said we were gonna close in January and December that we had discussed with him and we wouldn't be paying rent on those months because we weren't using the site. He agreed to it for the first year, and then last year he was sending me invoices saying things were past due, and basically because we didn't have quote unquote an agreement in place, it's $800, so I'm not going to fight about it, is what it comes down to. So I'm working with Dave Jensen on that and working on potentially securing maybe more storage there for Veolia. They wanted the county to buy a storage shed, which is it's just not practical. It doesn't really help much to buy an additional storage shed. So we just need to continue to, I had asked Veolia if they wanted to come and talk with the committee. Unfortunately, our representative wasn't available for tonight, but said he would be willing to come and talk to the committee about his concerns with Muskego and his thoughts on that. Another thing to bring up is that the contract actually does expire at the end of this year, so
Contract with,
the cooperative agreement between
Oh.
all parties, not the state contract, but our cooperative agreement. So that's something to think about and, are there changes we wanna make?
Rebecca,
Now's a good time to do that.
will the scanners help identify our frequent flyers?
That's exactly what we started doing. Prior, I wasn't having our administrative assistant actually input all the addresses into an Excel file. We were just basically counting the number of participants. So she was breaking them out by community and then inputting them into the data sheet that you guys see for how many people from which site, from what community, because that's how we invoice back. So it would simplify that process, but also that's what I want to do. I want to just, I'm a data person. I want to just filter it out, find out the repeats, and then be able to just hammer out some letters about use of the site and things like that. If people know we're paying attention, maybe they'll.
It's just the fact that they know we
Right.
are watching this thing.
Yeah,
They
big
may
brother.
back off.
And you know what, again, it's just another way to ensure, it's just another way of efficiently administering the program.
I'm real concerned about small business using the site. It was never intended that
Nope.
small business would use it.
It's not, and it's actually not at all for small businesses.
No,
This is only residential, this is
period.
period.
You know what may be driving that is we have a whole, higher volume of remodeling going on. And some of these remodelers, when they clean out a guy's garage to put a new garage or an addition on it, they have the option, put it in the dumpster or bring it into your program. And
They have more
it may be
options than
showing
that,
up.
they just don't wanna pay for them, so that's the problem. So it is more about people being responsible business owners. There's not much we can do if our local business owners are choosing to not be responsible and take advantage of taxpayer programs. So it is a cost of doing business, and we can say it as much as we can. I have hammered it into every press release, all of our information that goes out, that these are not for businesses. We still get it at the electronics programs, at the HHW programs. And I don't know if somebody has a silver bullet as to how I stop that, I am here. So one of my options is to try to scan it and just catch those frequent flyers and start sending out notices. But other than that, I can't accuse people, even if they're a small business owner, maybe it is from their house.
Sure.
So it's a fine line there.
Well, and the other thing that may be happening is, the property owner himself, because of this increased activity, which we only hope is gonna continue into the future, is gonna, as they bring more and more stuff in, these numbers are gonna go up.
It's funny though, it's not correlating directly to all the other markets and sectors that I would think. So if we're seeing these increased numbers, I expect to see increase in our municipal solid waste, an increase in our recycling, an increase in our electronics. Like, I expect to see a pretty much broad spectrum, because that usually goes along with those gains. And I'm not necessarily seeing that perfect direct correlation between all of those sectors. I guess perfect isn't the word, I'm not seeing it all coming together like that.
Maybe you're doing such a good job at advertising, there's more people using it, or
I
bringing more
try not
stuff,
to advertise it.
bringing more stuff in, rather than throwing it in the
There,
dumpster.
That's
there
our
is
job. I
a
mean,
lot
that is our
more
job.
of homeowners bringing it in than in the past.
Oh,
Because
yes.
I can tell you years ago that those purple trucks that used to drive around, if you ask them, what do I do with this? Oh, just wrap it up in newspaper and throw it in the garbage. There was never any thought of And the response was, no one's ever gonna find that in a 100-acre landfill. You're probably right. To an extent, but when you've got everybody doing that,
Mhm.
it's dispersed all through. You know, it's like pepper on food, it's everywhere.
I mean, so the intent of the program is working in that case, you know, and that, I think that that's the most important point, is that the intent of the program is working.
It's just costing a lot more
It's
than we
just costing
anticipated.
a lot more money.
Yeah, I think our other concern has always been if you've got a small business owner that's trying to cut costs and dropping it off, though he's not supposed to, and we turn him away, it's gonna wind up in your ditch and, you know, it's gonna wind up in, and that was always our other concern. If somebody wants to get rid of it and they don't wanna pay for it, they're not gonna pay for it and it's gonna get dumped.
That's why often VLA won't turn things away. So even if they did flag somebody, and I've had this happen maybe twice, but they said, you know, it was a business owner, we took it, and one time they took the cost, they bared the bill to the cost, because I said no, and then the next time we shared the cost, you know, because they were being responsible.
Right, right.
You know, and I also think there's some changing demographic that we're getting a lot of, my parents passed away, I'm cleaning out their house, I found all of this stuff. It doesn't have labels, I
Yep.
don't know where it's from, which then also hikes the cost up. So we could talk all day about true, like, why, you know, what we're trying to work out is, you know, how do we keep this within budget, you know? And the thing that kills me is that I asked John to project, and I projected based on everything historical. I mean, when you have this much data, your historical projections with a 10% variance should be pretty solid. And I projected to go about 4,000 over, and he projected a little less than that, and, you know, we were at 18,000.
Just like the election.
When you talk
No
about
comment.
the Jensen Center, and you're concerned about what you're gonna do with that, are you looking for a different site? Because I thought at one time when we talked about this, wherever you do this collection has to be kind of a unique site. Has to have-
Yeah, I mean, basically it has to be a licensed site.
It has to be a licensed facility.
Permitted.
Yeah, a licensed facility. I have begun the process of inquiring with the DNR. They're supposed to have this on their website. It's public information, all the licensed facilities in the state, and you're supposed to be able to search it by county. Unfortunately, their database is not working nor up to speed, so I sent in a request a while ago, which reminds me I will follow up on that, to get a list of all the facilities. I have a list of all the licensed operators and transporters in the state. I'm looking for a list of licensed facilities. So
I
if
thought you did this once before in pretty much the Muskego areas.
well, we have, I mean, the site that's across the street would be the next best thing actually for the Muskego area residents. So that's, if there weren't any other sites, which there, as far as the best of my knowledge in the city of Muskego, there are not.
But didn't, at one time, we think about going to DPW? Having them get a license to do that?
That was an option that was talked about but never pursued. We have no idea what the costs are, what the manpower is to even go in and pursue all of that.
Right.
That's just, you know, would that ultimately be convenient? It could be. But you gotta look where DPW is.
Yeah, I don't know how you would do that anyhow, because now you're talking tax dollars to do.
It's not gonna be
Things for
as
other-
convenient as
Yeah.
just using an existing site,
Right.
you know, so. And so I think that there could be other options, it's just that they're probably not gonna be cost effective, you know, and the
This
reality.
one is needed, that's the whole
The
point.
Muskego site, and I don't think that we'll find another, a site unless it's, so the only reason that the other sites are more cost effective is because A, there's more people using them, or B, it's owned by the contractor. So that's where you get your efficiencies. That's why Franklin and Menominee Falls are more cost effective. Now Franklin is less cost effective because not as many people use it. But it's right across the street, so could the 800 people that use the Jensen site use the Franklin site?
Maybe Advanced wants to be a licensed collector.
You
Why?
guys
There's
used
one
to do it.
across the street.
Right.
Yeah.
There would be no reason to, and again, I think that would then again incur more cost for us because it would be like a mobilization all the time. That's why Jensen is so expensive, is because the contractor has to mobilize every time. They do not have enough storage on site, they don't have the capacity there. So every time they're going in there and they're treating it like a mobile collection, so it costs that much more. To operate that site for the amount of people that come in, it's, you know, what are we at, over $60,000.
Okay.
So,
I mean, it's not only just number of people, but number of pounds too. You wanna look at the whole,
oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything wrong, but I'm looking at it less on that cost and more on the safety aspect and the storage aspect, and then that correlates to the cost aspect, and what other options do we have, and what might that look like, and so. So, you know, even the best laid plans, even if I had, with the closure protocol in place, if we were to do that this year, I wouldn't have closed based on projections.
right?
You know what I mean? So it's one of those, this is a tough program. There are a lot of variables and a lot of factors.
I forget, do we get pounds broken up too, or just cost?
What do you mean, like pounds, like lab packs?
Right,
Yes.
right, okay, because I know you said it didn't seem to be one specific area, but it looks to me like the only thing that's gone, I expect a change in labor costs,
Mm-hmm.
and I expect a change in supply cost. And then the only other thing that really changed is incineration.
Yeah. I mean,
15%.
I can go, we do get the invoices, and I actually do, just because the program has been
It's
so
such
difficult.
it's such a
I do
large
break
change,
down
it
the
looks like
lab
a-
packs
Yeah.
and all of those things, and I could definitely.
But the incineration looks like it might be a math error. Because it all ends up going to the same spot. To be incinerated. Even though it comes from the other locations, but that's the only one that has a dramatic change.
I mean, I can talk to John about it, definitely.
Yep.
I don't know that there's any math there, but.
Well,
I can
it just
talk-
because for such a large change from the rest of the,
Right,
and they even had a drop off in the number of people, but an increase in the total pounds. So last year it was 40 pounds a person, and this year it's 55, just for incineration. It just seems like that, it wouldn't be that one item that would change.
And not everything else change
Right, right.
proportionately.
Like I said, you'd expect labor to go up, and you'd expect materials, and 15% is faster than the per capita change.
yeah, no,
Oh.
I can.
By a long ways.
He did, after review, knock off a few $1,000s from the November invoice.
I don't
That's
know,
all he could find
If you put more
as
trending effort
mistakes.
into it.
I knew this was gonna come back to me at some point.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just JPEGs, there's not enough data here.
Any other questions, comments on 216's household hazardous waste? Item number 2, landfill odor issues and control. Harvey, do you want to start off? 'Cause I think,
Actually, whatever process has changed in the last 3 months, the odor issue has diminished drastically. So whatever you guys have done different.
I don't know, cause I'm getting calls from over by Boxhorn and Champions Village saying, what's going on, the last 2 weeks have been horrible.
The wind shift.
no, all my calls stopped last week. Ooh, Tuesday or Wednesday. Nothing since then.
So, yeah, that's less than a week though, if they stop Tuesday or Wednesday.
It was Tuesday or
So
Wednesday.
and that's what I'm saying, it's only been, I've been getting calls right through last week too about, and I know I talked to you and you explain what was going on, but they don't care.
No, not when it reads.
And a couple of those people are trying to sell their homes, and they had a showing when it was at its worst. And they had very difficult time explaining what was going on.
The
And that
calls,
was over in the Boxhorn area.
the calls I received were from Groveway area.
Yeah, I got those.
Gore's up against the big lake. And they were valid because ultimately I went out. Nothing at my house, but just move a little bit, in this case to the south and to the west, and it was night and day different. You ran into an airstream. And I also came down to the landfill a number of nights and went around the landfill and went down Union Church and back up Old Loomis. And you could be out here and not smell a thing.
Exactly.
You could be going down Old Loomis, get a half mile past the firehouse going west, and it just overwhelms you. But get another 200-300 yards, gone.
And I'd come down 45 in the morning at like 6 o'clock, and it'd make your eyes water. But as soon as I got across 36, I couldn't smell it.
Yeah.
So, and I know it kind of moves around, and I'm sure it's windage and elevation. But they don't care.
No, no. And they shouldn't. They really shouldn't. So I have been on the phone a number of times with Mike, disturbed his vacation back in Pennsylvania. And my issue is, we're not looking at everything that allows odors to take place. We have a procedure in place that on a daily basis, they apply cover to the waste, and that's it. That's what they do. Well, what is the cover material? There is different porosities with different cover material. How much is being reused? If you're reusing a lot of daily cover, it may contain a lot of plastic and other things that are just nice little tortuous paths for gases to come up and go off to the atmosphere. But so I asked Mike all those questions about where is this coming from? What's the porosity? Well, he didn't have the answers because that's not being done, or wasn't. Some of it's foundry sand, some of it's clay soils, some of it's from BRM material, beneficial reuse material, coming in off another site that can be used for that, based on the plans and the approvals. But I did notice one thing. Out of all the times I was talking with Mike, and all the times there was odors, it shut off like a switch. From one night, one afternoon and night to the next, and the temperatures were the same. And the wind directions were the same. They were very light. They were out of the southeast. One night, one afternoon, ugly odor, the next one, not a thing. And the difference was, it rained. It rained most of that second day. Light, but by afternoon, it was a nice moderate rain. There was not an odor to be had anywhere. You couldn't find it. And I went around the landfill 2 or 3 times that night just to see. Plus looking over here at the one across the street, nothing. So that got me to thinking that water makes a huge difference in terms of making that daily cover more compact and doing a better job of sealing against the waste material. I mean, think about it with the wet sand up north. When it's dry, it's everywhere. You wet it down and it stays put. Well, the same happens down here, especially if you're using foundry sands, mix of foundry sands, and all kinds of BRM type material that may come in. So Mike has agreed that the next time conditions are right, that we would suspect would be favorable for odors, which is typically warming environment, not the middle of summer, because you just don't seem to get it. But it takes a very soft breeze out of the south, southeast, which is typically a springtime phenomena, but it's also been a February phenomena. And it looks like maybe March is gonna have some of that same. Is that when those conditions look right, he's agreed that the water truck is gonna go up and do whatever it takes to wet down the daily cover that's put in place to see if that has an impact. And we very well may say, well, okay, that's fine, we've done that for a week, and we don't have an odor. But would we have had an odor? Well, the only thing you can do is kind of look for the same situation and not use the water truck. Yeah, probably get some complaints, but need to try to get this thing nailed down.
How much longer before you guys are done? With your wells?
We're first on the list.
It's a matter of the weather. The weather has to cooperate
So
for us
you
to
have
get on
no,
it.
no estimates?
Oh, is it a gas smell or is it a?
Recently,
Well,
it's not
a lot
gas.
of, yeah, it varies. I know some of the calls I got said they thought it was methane, but I don't think they know what methane, you know, they don't.
No.
Methane, no.
Methane off a
I
landfill,
know.
They don't
That's
smell.
what I
smell.
said, they don't.
no odor.
I know.
Did you guys compare your delivery rates to dry and odoriferous as opposed to
Pretty
wet?
constant.
Okay.
Pretty, you wouldn't see anything there.
But I guess the real confusing part of it is October is I don't have any data for this, but October is when things have really changed. I mean, prior to that, it's a landfill, so it's gonna smell. But since October, it's just been continuous. I mean, it'll stop a little bit, but then it's back again. And I guess the water thing is interesting, but Waste Management, maybe 7-8 years ago, had a major slip of one of their sites. And they were able to put some sort of a chemical out that counteracted the smell. And if you can't resolve what the issue is, they should do that, because I really do feel for people who are trying to sell their homes, because there's no way they're
Sell
gonna
them,
sell them.
live in them.
It's
I don't know,
You know, it's,
that's the unfortunateness of
Just
them
doesn't make
moving in.
sense.
Yeah, it was a mist and it was a perfume to mask the smell, is all it did.
Yeah.
So you wanna smell a cherry? you
Over the
smell a
landfill,
cherry
yeah.
Over the landfill. It's still there though. I mean, the smell is still in the landfill.
Mike, what's the effect on leachate generation if you start watering this thing down?
Well, there's always that possibility of adding to it, leachate generation.
Right.
My guess would be that the dirts would absorb most of it anyway.
yeah, I think most of it, and
You know, and another thing we could try is, I'm all for watering down the, the cover material if we want to, just to try something, but during these months, in fall and into the winter, we generally will use the beneficial reuse material, so we don't use the site, it's clay, which is a much more denser, tighter
Yeah.
clay.
oh yeah,
So we could even try that too. Just
Yeah.
For a week straight, all we do is haul site clay to the active area and see if that makes a difference.
A while ago, you guys were putting water back into the landfill to make it generate gas.
That was done, how many years of research? I mean, we haven't researched since I've been here.
Also on the
It
surface of
stopped,
stuff.
right.
I mean, we surface apply
Surface
liquid, but
apply.
we haven't researched since
When you put that,
2014.
when you put that oil fluff or whatever you wanna call it on top for cover, do you mix that with ground or clay?
They don't use auto fluff anymore.
We used to, but we used to not.
It's all foundry sand now.
Oh, you used to use oil
Yeah.
fluff,
Yes, we don't.
and not anymore?
They don't
That
get it
stopped
anymore.
about 2 years ago.
Okay.
They stopped generating it?
They stopped
Well,
processing it.
Whenever you use an ADC, you're gonna get a little bit of mix with the clays too. So yeah, you will have a mix. Be it foundry sand or auto fluff.
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, did you record or track over the course of the winter when you were getting these complaints?
They actually started, like Harvey was saying, they started probably, for me, they started in January, but more so, mostly in
February.
That was the biggie.
And the reason I ask is, you know, this year we've had an early melt on the lake. The earliest melt we've ever had out there that seems to remain permanent. We had a refreeze for a couple days ago. When the lake opens up, we've got 2,300 acres of water that opens up, and you've got another 1,000 to 1,500 acre of marsh that's starting to open up. I live on the edge of that, I'm out on that stuff all the time, and there's plenty of methane gas being created
wonder
at
if this-
that point.
That's very close
Your
to what
throwaway
you're talking
complaints,
about.
First of all, when you say methane gas, I don't know how you're detecting it.
well,
It's probably CO2 is a gas.
well, and this is the same gas that in summer, when you go and put like an oar into the mud, which is 3 feet deep, you just get a cloud of the gases that are coming out.
Yep.
And that's methane.
No.
No, it's
No.
decomposition.
It's
Methane's odorless.
Methane has no odor.
Yeah,
Well,
methane
what-
may be a compartment of it.
What you're getting is organic
that
decomposition.
decomposition.
They're captains and, well, cadaverine and putrescine are the easiest ones to use because I remember the names.
Okay,
But
well,
they're the trace elements. It's predominantly, well, in the organics you're talking about, it's probably 30 to 40% methane, the rest is carbon dioxide, and then the little stuff that you smell. On the landfill, you guys are 50, 45,
On what method?
yeah. And the rest
Are you at
is,
50 methane?
We're a little lower.
Oh, you are?
50 and a half, 51,
And what is your carbon dioxide?
34.
And the rest is a mix?
Nitrogen and oxygen. Oxygen's usually 1, a little less than 1. The rest is balanced gas.
10%.
Well, whatever that combination is, that gas is the smell of decomposition, which
Right.
is the same
Yep.
thing that's going on up here. And what I'm wondering is, as that air, when we get heavy air, whether it's, I think it's low pressure with a couple other components in it, that gas hangs over our neighborhood through that whole valley coming up the creek up here. And
Sure.
whether that's being misinterpreted to be coming from the top of the mountain, it's hard to say. We might take a look at that here.
You guys are tracking complaints, right?
Pardon me?
The complaints are being tracked, right?
well, at the moment, they're spread out.
They're-
And
they're
it's not
spread
that I
out.
have to receive
Right.
them, but
And-
somebody has to receive all of them.
Yeah.
And I did record, just simply because I wanted to be aware of it, on Oakwood, they're doing directional boring, and they're doing that through swampland. And when they were cutting that open, there was a strong smell of decomp. And I did record it on this audit, but because it was across the street. So there are times when there's activities, but, when it's truly a garbage odor, and, so garbage smells like your trash can. And it's the same smell, just, build up over more time when it's dumped all together. And then, landfill gas is more of that decomp smell. But when it's garbage, it doesn't normally travel as far. So, when we start talking a half mile or more, I assume it's a gas odor, it's landfill gas odor people are experiencing.
But I think you're right, it could be, because the people that Mark is talking about, that I was also getting complaints on Ryan and Groveway are right there.
Yeah, and I live right there.
Yeah, I do too. And
Yeah. But you
when I was on the
didn't
phone with him, I walked out the door. I said, nothing.
get it. Yeah.
He said, come by my house. So I did. I said, see your records.
Which makes sense, because then you're closer to the lake, where,
But the lake was frozen over then.
oh, it was.
Yeah. We started into our thaw, but the lake has this delayed reaction that takes a bunch of warm air to melt it down.
I thought the shore was been open for a while.
Well,
No.
probably about 3 weeks is when
Yeah.
it started to open up.
Right.
And, through the course of the
That was
winter-
the center. When I was over to your place, that was what?
Yeah,
3-4 weeks ago?
Yeah.
That wasn't much open. Nothing by the shore, nothing by the marsh.
Well, through the course of the winter, this was an unusual winter. And
Right.
at no point did that lake ever totally close up.
Right.
It's probably been on the average 30% open. And whether that has, these warmer temperatures maybe have created more activity with these gases.
Well, more oxygen's gonna get in there.
So Joe, you had
Well,
put
we
that
hope
there
so.
were 18
Yeah.
complaints since November, right? Between November, December, January,
Today,
February.
yeah.
So,
And that's the complaints that have gotten to me.
okay, don't
That's-
harass me about this. What does that look like historically? I mean, have we seen?
First time.
Yeah, it is.
Last year was the first recorded complaint that I had in the annual summary. Someone complained to Mark in September of 2015.
And they even got a comment from one of the callers that they've lived there for 8 years and they've never noticed the landfill until recently.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would say in October and November, it was quite probably that you guys were doing that road. You were exudating a fair amount.
Taking out that clay road.
Yeah. The access road up into the landfill.
Mhm.
The farther it was into the landfill, the deeper it was because that's how they had to raise it up. And as they exposed the waste for that, they'd fill it in the next day. But after that, you had the,
Gas system.
yeah, that gas system, that trench that was left open, which was, it's their responsibility, but it was a contractor that left it
Yeah.
open. But since that point, I have not experienced any offsite odors when I'm out here. Admittedly, dusk is a better time for the whole inversion process to occur, and it's more likely to occur in a landfill than in a swamp condition, because in the swamp, you've got that giant heat sink. The water's absorbed all that heat, and it's absorbing more, so those gases are gonna stay near the surface because the heat's being drawn in, not being expelled. So it doesn't move the gas up. In the landfill's losing heat, that's forcing the gases into the air. And then when it gets over top of your swamp, or a similar thing like a lake, well, then it's sucking that heat back out of the air, it drops down to get the odors.
Well, isn't it true though that when you have a still night, overcast, where it just seems like it hugs the ground? And other nights it just goes up and it doesn't travel. We're here on a still night, it seems like it hits something and just,
And it's, the smells that we get, they're non-reactive. So without flame, without energy, there's nothing to get rid of those components. There's nothing to get them to react. The only thing that gets rid of them is disbursement. So more clean air versus, more gas. So, I mean, when it does drop down on somebody, it's a strong odor.
So maybe we need to go to Harvey's house and put up some tiki lamps on.
It's actually on Highway 45, but it's bad. It's not bad at my house.
Yeah, 45 is
Highway
worse.
45, when you turn the corner off 8 Mile onto 45. When you get down to Al's Auto,
Fast charging.
to this driveway, some days it's really hard to breathe. It's
So at that time, it's during
6 AM.
virtually
That's what I
no
was gonna
wind.
say, 6
Pretty much.
a.m.
No wind.
Yeah.
So you're in between two hills
yeah,
Both are cut.
and they're both.
yeah.
The best thing for us, for Brett and I as operators of the landfill, is to know when you're getting a complaint as soon as possible. I mean, if the person doesn't wanna call us and they're reaching out to the committee, call us right away.
Yep.
We're not perfect. We may be a little shy on cover one day in one spot or something like that. A hose may come off a gas one. At least then we can address things as soon as possible.
Well, I couldn't get you, but I got Brent. I even got Gail. I said, find him. I need to talk to him now.
Oh, yeah. And that way we can address it. And if it's us, it's us. We're not perfect. By no means. And it may not have anything to do with the garbage, or it may have something to do with leachate too. There's a distinct odor to leachate.
Yeah.
Big
So
time.
it's not always gas and garbage. There's other things that we're dealing with.
The problem is, you've got the byproducts of decomposition hitting the airstream, and it takes part per billion for you to catch it on an odor. And it's an ugly odor. Mercaptans are terrible. I mean, that's why they put them in natural gas and then propane so you'll smell them. You know,
What Harvey's been doing, Harvey and I, or Harvey was doing every day for 2.5 weeks, I thought, that's perfect. That's what I like to see.
Okay.
You know, and that's what I appreciate more than, well, last week, we smelled this.
There's no way for us to really track it down.
Yeah.
yeah, this, you're right.
You know, and it all really comes down, I'm not pointing fingers at my competition, it's wind direction.
Yeah,
It's wind direction, but where's the root source? That's what I wanna go after, because I can't change the wind direction, I can't do anything about it.
Right.
But we've got a chance of going after the root source, or at least reducing it. Now, I understand what we're dealing with, okay?
Right.
We're trying to take a rotting pile of garbage and contain all the odors. I understand that.
But what I don't want are residents not getting an answer. I mean, I want them to understand or inform them the best we can as to what we do.
Well,
And to have somebody say they're not getting any responses based on their order complaints is the worst thing as an operator we can hear.
well, I can tell you the calls I get aren't, oh, thank you for the call, goodbye. You better have some explanation and what you're going to do to address the situation.
In Mike's defense, so in the 2 weeks that I was emailing him every morning, the one day it was bad, and I did go down to 112th Street to see, and there's also the smelling. And I really wonder if it isn't because of the high humidity this winter, but because Waste Management has gotten so far off of 45, and we don't know what their complaints are, because they'll be coming off of 76th Street.
well, we do know when,
You got people here on their committee.
You got, sure.
But it isn't as apparent over there as it is here right now.
well, not now, but at one time, I can say it was.
And they've been smart, they bought all the houses up around them too. I mean, if there is a larger, well, I'm not making a joke, you guys own a lot of the properties around you. It's the same with the well sampling. We were talking about, you only got 29 back, but you had to take houses out of the program. The landfills, their job is to take advantage of this geology. So they've taken up the space they can, and that has made a buffer for all of us. So this site has a great buffer for litter. Litter does not get anywhere, and it appeared at one time to be very buffered for odors, but that's not the case now. Across the street, great example, they're right up to 112th Street, they've got no buffer for litter. The wind blows, they've got litter offsite. But they also now, that's all their property. They still have to deal with the appearance, but they've got to go all the way to 92nd to hit a property that's not owned by them. So they're not getting the odor complaints that they were at one point. Doesn't mean that necessarily the odor is as well controlled as it was 2 years ago when the odor complaints stopped because they changed operations. So there's probably a learning curve, you know. The DNR, you know, won't let me use climate change anymore to describe conditions in landfill because it doesn't happen. So this particular anomaly, we can't, the DNR won't support any discussions on climate change for dealing with issues at landfills.
Oh, climate change, global warming,
Right.
cooling, inversions,
Right.
forget it. Yeah, I agree.
But
That's a
it
far-fetched
It
stretch.
could be, you know, this particularly unique weather we're having this year is the real culprit. And they know how to make the changes, it's just, you know, they need the feedback to get it done. Like I said, there was 2 months where, you know, we definitely had waste, you know, soil open to waste, and there was a reason for odor. And then, was it December? When did you have that seep? I've got it in the audits.
In the corner there?
Yeah, in the road, the ditch. There was a seep in the roadside ditch for the access road. And seeps come with gas. Yeah, anytime you have leachate, you're gonna have gas, that's just the way it works. And anytime you have gas, you're gonna have moisture. That moisture, when it drops out, is leachate because it grabs all the particles. So he had a bubbling, you know, seep, which was addressed and now has been repaired, and someone has a vacuum on it. But it makes sense that if it was bubbling during the day, while they were, you know, diverting around it because of the rain, it was bubbling that night as well.
But the odors, I would say that you find on 8 Mile and 45 with a westerly breeze since early January are much less offensive. So it was that gas trench that we saw, I'm sure of that. But Joe brought up a good point, you know, the landfill is up until now has always been kind of protected. And now you've pushed it a little farther west and there's more open. The little woods that's out there is not protecting you anymore. So yeah, you might
Well,
be picking up more.
We're getting higher.
You're getting higher,
We're not moving really, we haven't moved any further west for
Last 3 years.
10 years, really.
Yeah.
But phase,
Just up, we're going up.
Just up.
phase
So
3
we
and
don't-
5 aren't protecting you from the sun. You know,
Right.
You're getting different exposures.
That's probably a
throughout the day.
bigger difference
Mhm.
than anything else.
Yep.
Is the height.
Cause yeah, there isn't much to block any breeze coming out of the south or
Right.
or from the west. It's just wide
Now,
open.
next fall, we'll be in a hole. So that may be another test for us to see
Mhm.
when we're down
Not
in the
gonna
hole or
be the
something.
argument to the DNR, as long as you stay in a hole, the neighbors don't
Yeah, we
complain.
gotta.
Gotta keep making it
one more.
Let's keep going west, that's all we care.
Is Mike-
Oh, it sounds a little self-serving.
Yo, he still was between the two.
So Harvey, is there any property available out that way?
Because for a while,
Right.
Depends how many zeros you have, yeah.
Yeah, the right price.
for a while, I wasn't able to get a hold because you were mostly not there.
You can always call me.
Every time I tried to call you, then nobody answered, you were over there. But I get.
I heard it.
Got him to come down
I got
off
the
the
days
deal, so I
when I
talked
was-
to him.
Call me, I'll be
Doesn't matter.
available.
It's easier for me, I mean, I can text both of you, I don't know.
Remember that
text.
minor.
Nope.
Because it doesn't matter where you
I
are.
got bigger
it's
fish to
just-
fry.
It's almost that.
I don't know.
Look back, you know, when you text
I'm
back.
proud of you, I've not.
Yes.
Okay. Anything further on landfill odors? Go ahead, Joe.
I feel it important to point out that the statute does state that it is unacceptable for landfill odors to be off-site.
Right.
And that the host agreement does have language for dealing with it if it becomes a chronic
Yes,
problem.
I'm quite aware.
What makes it a chronic problem?
How frustrated Mark gets is my guess.
Is it defined
I don't recall.
as in X amount?
It's,
That would
it
require-
is,
That would require
it is,
research.
it is somewhat defined,
Have we
yes.
been trending this?
There are some thresholds, not on smell per se, but on events that would cause.
Complaints, recorded complaints.
You gotta do a lot of things, I mean, because there's significant financial penalties that were negotiated into the contract.
We have an on-site weather station too, so every 10 minutes it updates, it tells us, within 5 minutes, the wind direction, speed, moisture, everything.
And I assume you're accumulating the data, right?
We have that.
We can't-
Filing
back
we
as
don't-
soon
we
as it was
have-
installed.
But it helps us to go back based on
right,
the order
that's why I
complaint to say which way was the wind.
See how important this is?
And they've kept it past the requirement too.
Thanks.
Because it was 2007 or 8 that you guys didn't need to have it anymore for your air permit.
What,
That weather station.
it helps us with other stuff.
Those are
That's
just,
never going away.
those are just particulate
Yeah.
stations.
All those that were around, yeah.
Those dust.
Just out of curiosity, where is the anemometer and things like that located?
Oh,
Right on, just west of the office where the equipment is. And then it's on my desk actually where you can view.
Well, I realized the, talking about the sensors, not the monitors.
It's on the pole right outside the
Yeah,
office.
west of the office.
So it's,
About 30 feet, 30 feet in the air.
so we've got the space of this backyard here and this building and then everything goes up, right? Okay.
You don't have monitors on the perimeter of the property, do you? How expensive of a device is that?
Frank, I think got this one up and running.
I know of only one time that we actually did monitoring like that. There were some, it was very difficult. These are remote little sensors that would wake up at certain times and collect, but it wasn't very forthcoming. It hasn't really taken off, if you will. I mean, it wasn't very reliable. The data was inconclusive and it was just very costly. I don't I've not seen other landfills in the country do these things, kind of things.
Well, you know, as our populace here starts being more aware of these odors here, maybe that'd be a safe thing to, a wise thing to put up on the four corners and see if it's really coming from you folks, or identify where on the property it seems to be
It
coming
gets to be
from.
what Mark was saying. His house was fine. He goes down the block, he's there, he goes 200 yards outside of there, and he's fine again. And it was like, these like little streams. So if your monitor isn't in that stream, it's gonna collect, good data. And I think that was the problem.
Too.
As we moved them and tried to find what was the stream yesterday or an air zone yesterday was not the fact today, things like that.
Well, if it's coming from the mountain, somewhere on the perimeter of that would be able to detect that, and if you can't.
No.
With typical.
I don't
It's
wanna-
gonna be tough. Because.
Wind doesn't flow like that. And you put two monitors up 300 feet apart and neither one could detect it, and yet right down the middle
The
could be
thing
just
about it also, Mark, is the height,
ugly.
That odor might go up and then come down
That's-
and
That's a lot of what
bypass
happens.
the senders completely.
It's just one big wave.
Are there small, reliable mercaptan sensors and things like that?
Personal monitors, there's
Yeah,
things that you wear on
No,
your
but
belt.
But
there's
they're,
no
they're
predictability of it.
they're an interaction device. So I could be in an odor-rich environment for a minute and get the same results on that device if I walked the perimeter of the landfill and was only in low concentrations for an extended time.
They've
That's not.
put the averaging right into the stupid device.
Well, you either have to be able to do it inline, like we do with
Yeah.
water samples, or grab samples. But either way, you still have that laboratory environment. So inline, whatever device it is, either you have it out there or you have it on yourself, is going to use up the reagents. So you've only got, you can do that snapshot in time. There are, really it comes down to people. When it really is an issue, they send people out, they do monitoring and record keeping and so on.
But no one's making little tiny.
No, I mean, you can do
IR type stuff.
sonotubes where you have it samples every so often during the day,
Yeah,
but then you still end up with that average. You still end up with, if it's got more than one that's, on the other side of the landfill that's sampled at the same times, and you can show the wind direction, well, then maybe you've got a result.
maybe.
And I can double check. My knowledge on that's probably 2 years old for the instant sampling.
But IR sampling, we used to do a lot of that, especially in the medical area. But you've got to have a known reference, and we used to spin that.
Yep.
And so you've got the air and then the known reference, air known reference, and you spin it at 500-600 RPM, and you've got instantaneous readings all the time. And it wasn't particularly cheap.
Yeah, but it's not particularly accurate either. And you're still stuck with the fact that, you've got one person that walks around and does it.
I'm not looking at one person walking around and doing it.
Well, it still becomes a labor intensive activity. That's what I should have said. But it's not like having something set up on a perimeter basis.
Well, I'd be looking, if you can get something that works, I would be looking to set it up on a permanent basis. At least until odor complaints and odor issues seem to be under control. We're comfortable that we've found the root causes of why this happens.
I'm going to meet with a PACE rep today, this evening after this. I'll see if they have something new.
Sure.
And that's who he's been using for the ground work.
Yep. Anyone else? Anything else? Review payments made from committee funds? Wasn't,
Nothing seemed out of line.
nope. Not that I saw. Sure, get that page open again, forget it. I got my axe off.
But you need Motion to accept the report.
I don't think we ever have in the past, we've just reviewed it. We've just, there it is, yeah.
Yeah.
No, we've just reviewed it and done just exactly what you said.
Yep.
Cause I didn't wanna do a lot more review if you're gonna make that a
Oh,
full motion and say, yeah, it's
no, that's
good as
fine.
gold. Communications, other business authorized by law, go ahead, Joe.
JSA Civil Environmental Engineers has changed their name, we're now JSA Environmental. It shouldn't impact anything for the committee, but
Oh, it just puts stress on us like you can't believe.
Better put that on the agenda.
Yeah, that's open for discussion, right?
So it's JSA Environmental?
yeah, Dad doesn't want to be an engineer in Virginia. He doesn't feel like going through the hassle.
Right.
And to have engineer in the name of a corporation, it has to be owned 50% or more by an engineer in that office.
Engineer in that office, in
And-
that state.
And then, even if he did go and get his PE for Virginia, he'd have to buy a certain portion of the company back from me to be
Yeah.
able to use the name. So we were JSA Environmental in Virginia for the last year. And last year, we made the decision to change the name, but it seems my partners are not as aggressive when it comes to actually sending off letters, writing checks, and, asking the state for permission. So we voted again this January, and actually made it come true. So I think February 2nd, we actually changed our listing in the state. So really, it's just a name change. I'm gonna have 2 email addresses I'll receive at JSA, receive and write out at JSA, at JSA Environmental, but the JSA Civil account will still work as well.
So you'll be changing the civil environmental engineer's title?
Just JSA Environmental. It also takes up less space. And we're gonna go, if anyone remembers, when JSA started, we had the little garbage truck with stuff falling out of the back.
Oh,
It's our logo.
yes.
So since we never really made it as an environmental firm, we're going back to the garbage truck. Get shirts and everything. And
Okay.
all this with no increase in rates. How's that?
That's what Rolly was listening for, right?
Like here, we go down, you're not engineering.
We went over.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
It's a title. It's a title that doesn't
We
change the
went over
quality
an
of the
hour.
service.
Getting paid.
Very-
Citizen commentary, there is none.
Thanks for the idea.
Look for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned at 7:03 PM.